Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. Another Saturday in the books, another top 25 AP poll coming out Sunday afternoon that you got to get into. And now through 11 weeks, I still think there are a lot of football teams that are overrated. Still think there are some teams that are underrated. Want to get into this top 25 and also kind of just have that preview conversation of what the college football playoff rankings might look like Tuesday night. Fired up to get into it. Now, before we do, and as always, I think most importantly for this episode, let it fly in the comment section. By far my favorite episode we do every single week, where it's just a lot of college football fans getting after each other in the comment section. I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Let it fly in the comment section if y'all do enjoy the content. Consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, let's start as we normally do. That is the teams that are underrated. Who you got here?
I'm going to start with Tennessee, and I don't think people realize how good Nico Iamaleava is starting to play. And that was kind of the one thing, frankly, holding that Tennessee back, or team back, I should say, because that defense is elite. I think you could certainly argue it's the best defense in the country. We know the defensive line's great. Secondary is really good, too. And if Nico's going to hit his shots, when they have shots to hit big plays, when he has open receivers, and he's had them all year, and he makes them, with the way they run the ball, with the way their offensive line plays, that's a team that I look at, two teams especially, Texas and Penn State. I'm not totally sure I'm keeping Tennessee below those two.
I would lump Tennessee in with Alabama and Ole Miss. Like three teams that have been kind of roller coasters to start 2024. The best versions of all three of those teams are national championship caliber. Like when Nico is playing like we expect him to play, like we know he can play, this Tennessee team's very hard to beat. When Alabama plays the way we saw Saturday night in Baton Rouge, that's an Alabama team that can win a national championship. And then Ole Miss. Like Ole Miss started SEC play dreadfully, but we kind of said over the last 2 weeks against Oklahoma and against Arkansas, they were kind of working their way up. And you kind of saw it culminate in a dominant performance against Georgia. Everybody wants to talk about Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin, this Ole Miss offense, the story of Ole Miss. You said Tennessee has the best defense in the country. I'd make an argument that Ole Miss has the best defense in the country. It's been a dominant unit, Dill. Those three teams, if they can find the consistency in the back half of November, going into the college football playoffs, going to be tough odds for every team in the country.
Yeah, and honestly, I do think Tennessee's separated themselves a little bit because the consistency has been better. They had one really bad game against Arkansas, I would say, but otherwise they've been really, really good, and I do think they're turning it on lately. Again, my question, frankly, Penn State, I'm still not convinced they can score at the level they need to score to be really competitive. I know that defense is great, but man, their lack of explosive potential, because I don't think they really have any of it, is a real problem. So I'm not in love with them at 4. Texas, again, I think that Georgia loss now starts.
I think Texas is worth diving into. Like you look at Texas and say, you're sitting at the number 3 team in the country. Dill, what's the most impressive win Texas has? The 3-point win on the road against Vanderbilt, who South Carolina just shelled last night? Or is it going on the road and beating a pulseless Michigan team that doesn't have any quarterbacks? Like, I think from the eyeball test, when we watch Texas, they haven't played very good football teams. Like, they played Oklahoma, shelled them. Oklahoma stinks. Shelled Michigan. Michigan stinks. Florida had a quarterback that I think I might throw the football better than playing against Texas. I look at Texas and say, you watch Texas say, yeah, it looks like a pretty good team. But from a resume standpoint, are we the one team that they played? And I shouldn't disrespect Vanderbilt like that. Vanderbilt's a solid team, a 3-point win for Texas. The one team that we saw that was a college football playoff caliber team that Texas played, they played them at home and got kind of ran off the field by Georgia. I look at Texas and say, I'm not convinced they're the number 3 team in the country right now.
No, and that's kind of where I'm at, because you look even Alabama, Tennessee, those are more battle-tested teams. I think the real fascinating one now is Indiana, because this was the first time you really got to see them play what I would call a really good defense. And they certainly didn't play very well on offense. Again, they got the job done. If Michigan has even a slightly or well below average quarterback, but just not the worst quarterback play in the history of college football, Michigan, I think, wins that game relatively.
No, don't go disrespect. Indiana deserve. Look, is Indiana ceiling and Alabama, Ole Miss, or Tennessee ceiling the same? No, probably not. Like if Alabama, Ole Miss, or Tennessee play their best football and Indiana plays their best football, I'm probably taking Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss. But Dill, we're talking about college football. We're talking about what teams give you the consistency every single week. Indiana has given us that. You can't just be waiting to cherry pick that one performance where they don't win by 40
But that
points.
was the only performance you could even judge. They've played the worst schedule of any of these teams by miles. I mean, they really didn't play a team that could possibly challenge them. Nebraska was going to be that team. Nebraska's
They
not
shelled them.
particularly. Nebraska's bad though, so that's the problem. Like Nebraska's not a good football team. They just got beat pretty badly by UCLA. I know the score looked kind of close, but for most of that game, UCLA was jumping on them. So I look like you saw Indiana go play a really good defense. You see the offensive line's probably not exactly what you need it to be to play really high level defenses. I think you saw like again, I don't know that they're that team right now. Kurt Signetti, like nothing against him. He's obviously unbelievably doing an unbelievable job, but they just don't have the talent level across the board. I don't think that like you look Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, like those type of teams.
Yeah, and I will not argue with that in the slightest. But this, I think it's so. Like, we've seen Tennessee not play some good football. We've seen Alabama and Ole Miss play some really bad football. They'll, that was probably the worst game Indiana played, and they still were able to get it done. And really, like as a Michigan fan watching that football game, it's not like I was sitting there saying like, "Oh, we got a chance to win this one." I look at Indiana and say I think they deserve to be a top 5 team in the country. Am I going to pick them to win a national championship? No, probably not. Do I think they have the highest potential or ceiling out of any team in the country? No, I don't. But I think the consistency that you get from this team every single week, they deserve to be a top 5 team in the country right now. I'll kick it to you now. Any other underrated teams that you want to dive into right now?
Probably South Carolina, honestly.
Gotta
I
be.
know they'll
Gotta
probably
be.
say this until they put them into like at least the top 20. I mean, this team, again, they had some ugly losses early. Lenora Sellers was making some real bad mistakes for them early. But man, when he gets kind of rolling and he's started to get it
He's
rolling, like
rolling.
similar to like Nigo, he's really a problem. He's really, I think, again, avoiding negative plays. He's using his legs more effectively. And then the big kicker to me is Rocket Sanders looks like a completely different running back. And if they get the 2022 version, Arkansas version of him, I mean, that's a team that with the defense they play, they're better than a lot of those teams in the 15 to
Well,
20
look, to
range.
me, yeah, South Carolina, they figured out their identity. We kind of knew there might be some growing pains with a young, raw quarterback, Lenore Sellers. You saw some of those growing pains, but what you're starting to see now is a really dynamic, good athlete at quarterback that is towing the line between making really good football plays, which we've seen him do, but also not making those, like just scratch your head and say, what are you doing, kid? Play. And if he can do that, they run the football well, they play the defense that they can play. That's a really, really good football team. Dill, Missouri's one spot below them. Like the AP poll will just refuse to drop Missouri out of the top 25. They played at home a very bad Oklahoma team and won off just a absolute wild ending. South Carolina's 13.5 point favorites against Missouri this weekend. Like I just think South Carolina's a real one that tells you I like South Carolina a lot. Now you look at Missouri, you talk about an overrated team. I really do think they're just propping that Missouri team up there when they probably shouldn't be
Hey,
propped up.
Drinkwitz said they're still in the playoff race, so we'll see.
Yeah, look, they hypothetically, theoretically are. They better start playing like a college football team or a college football
No, I'm
playoff team.
just kidding. I thought that was like again, he said some of those things. I know he likes to stir the pot a little bit. That was ridiculous. I'm totally with you. This Missouri team, they're not a good football team. Their offensive line is so disappointing to what I think we thought they were going to be. And they just haven't gotten anything going on offense. Like their defense, honestly, is pretty decent, I think, but that offense, it's very inept.
Without Brady Cook, like that team, it's just, and I think Missouri fans know
But
it.
even
It's
with
it's
Brady Cook, they weren't playing particularly good on offense, so it's
yeah,
tough.
that's very fair, very fair. Let's talk about some big movers. Georgia and Miami, obviously both taking losses. Georgia going, I believe they were number 2 in the AP poll last week. Go down to number 11. Miami at number 12. I guess what I'll ask you is, do you think that is a fair, you might as well say, punishment to move Georgia, Miami outside of the top 10?
Georgia definitely deserves that punishment. I mean, I think like they were kind of skating by on some teams, skate by on Kentucky. that offense, I just don't know that we can continue to give it the benefit of the doubt
Yeah,
that they're going to figure that
yeah.
out. Because at this point, we're too deep into the season to keep kind of giving them like, oh, they'll get it together. Like that offense, just something's broken, and I don't think they have the skill
Well, what they're
position.
struggling with is like, okay, so it's obvious that Carson Beck does not look like the Carson Beck we saw in 2023. Noted. But what the most concerning problem is like Ole Miss whipped him. 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss for Ole Miss's defense. That Georgia offensive line has some problems. And when we're used to talking about Georgia and that Georgia team that we do give the benefit of the doubt to, that's a Georgia team that dominates the lines of scrimmage. They're just not doing that on the offensive side of the football. Look, you don't make a lot of money betting against Kirby Smart figuring it out. But I'm kind of with you. We're in the middle of November right now. I don't think you continue to just say they'll figure it out eventually because right now they haven't figured it out. Miami's a really interesting one. We kind of consistently said that Miami has some flaws, specifically on defense, but we were overlooking those flaws because I do think pound for pound, I think they might have the best offense in the country. They certainly have a quarterback that's playing like the best quarterback in the country, but they got. They were relying on Cam Ward to play Heisman level football every single week to win football games. Cam Ward played good against Georgia Tech. He probably wasn't a Heisman Trophy winner that weekend or that on Saturday. And then the defense every single week they trot out a defense that looks like they are completely unprepared. It's a problem. Look, Miami's one of the most dangerous teams in the country because they can score with anybody in the country. But this defense, it's a massive flaw in this Miami Hurricanes team right now.
Yeah, and to me, that's a fair punishment because again, like I think it does matter. All those things that you kind of like, their
Yeah,
quality of wins like
yeah,
not good enough. They just haven't. They're like similar talk to Indiana, frankly, and obviously Indiana hasn't shown the weakness nut level
yeah.
that
They
we
haven't
seem
shown the
to.
flaws. Yeah.
But you also like again when you don't beat enough good teams and then you go lose one, but you're also in games with teams that you shouldn't be in games with. I think this is certainly a fair kind of place. Again, Miami's still a good team. I don't think they should like put them at like 20 or something, but I don't know that I'm totally comfortable putting Miami above teams like Ole Miss and Alabama either.
Yeah, it's so frustrating to watch that defense every single week. It almost feels like what LSU was doing last year, where they had this just high octane, amazing offense, but they just got in shootouts every single week.
Because you are right, there's no margin for error for Cam Ward. Like he needs to play damn near perfect, or they're gonna
So
lose.
yeah, and what's frustrating is you look at I think they can fix it. That's what I've been saying all year. Is like, especially in the front seven, like they got dudes on the defensive line. It's going to get better at some point. I mean, against Georgia Tech, it got worse, like significantly worse. It's a frustrating team because they can be so dangerous, and they just have such a massive flaw on the defensive side of the ball. Dill, let's go to a team, and I'm just going to put this one out here, and then we'll just kind of go through the rankings here. A team that you think is going to make a run in the back half, a team that we're going to be talking about that's maybe outside of the top 12 right now, but will be in that college football playoff conversation come the end of November here.
I think it's going to be Texas A&M. I think them versus Texas is a matchup that I
playoff
can
game.
have circled. That's a playoff game. And again, I'm still looking like, okay, Texas just rolled Florida. Florida pretty much was playing with like all their two deeps on defense. Obviously, the quarterback play is not close. And frankly, for the first half of that game, like Florida played okay. Again, their quarterback play was really killing them the way like Michigan's quarterback kills Michigan. But like Florida was in that they're physically, they were running the ball okay. I thought they were playing decent defense. Again, they just got broken by not having good enough play at that position. But I look like A&M's a really good team. I still think. I think Marcel Reed. I feel like A&M fans maybe are a little more down on him than they should be in terms of his development as just a pure thrower. I think they can really challenge this Texas team. And again, I'm still not 100% sure I know what Texas is. Now, I think Texas is really good because I still look at the talent and the people on that team. They're awesome. But I do kind of want to see that game, and A&M doesn't really get challenged, I don't think, until they see
Yeah,
Texas.
I think both of those teams that'll be a college football playoff game at the end of November. And that's going to be like one of the most exciting, fun college football fan experiences that you're going to see.
Yeah, that
And I'm with,
rivalry. all the stakes.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
with the stakes of like an SEC championship bid on the line and a college football playoff bid on the line, like that, it's not gonna get much better than that. And I'm kind of with you. Like Texas A&M's a team that I think's trending up, and I think they can continue to trend. Like Marcel Reed's still a young green quarterback. Like what happens? Like you had a bye week, you continue to get him reps, you build your offense around Marcel Reed. That team I think can get really dangerous come the end of November. I'll continue to bet like Colorado at 18, like they're just quietly climbing. I wouldn't say quietly, but they're climbing up. Well,
No,
kind
I
of
mean
are
they
quietly,
definitely don't get the same buzz. Like if this was them last year, you wouldn't stop
but
hearing about them. But like they definitely don't get the buzz they are last year. And I don't know, like they're a really good team. Like people probably should be taking
that
note
front
of it.
seven is it's legit. They can protect Shador Sanders. They got NFL wide receivers all over the offense. Like we kind of knew, like if you can fix specifically that front seven, make it look like a power four front seven, and then give Shador some help on the offensive line, this can be a dangerous team. And that's kind of exactly what they've done. And that's another team that they're like a lot of people just remember that Colorado team that played Nebraska week 2. This is a different Colorado team than what we saw week 2 in Lincoln, Nebraska. Colorado's a team that I would continue to keep an eye on. That's kind of what I have. Like BYU, just the team of destiny, continuing to win football games up to number 7.
South
Uh,
Carolina is kind of one that's in my mind. Like I'd keep my eye on them. I just think the way they've gotten to this point, I don't really think they have much of a path to the playoff. But they're a team that's fully capable of being a real problem down the stretch. I just don't know that they need a lot of things to break right for them if
we
they're
yes, agreed. They're in that position where they need help around them. A South Carolina fan put this so perfectly. Like that's a team that can beat anybody in the country. Like I don't know if I'm picking you against any team in the country, but when South Carolina plays, like they got a really high ceiling that can give like when you have a pass rush like that, it's going to give a lot of offenses a lot of problems. And then when you have that run game that South Carolina has, watch out for South Carolina, whether they make the college football playoffs or not. Spoiler type team late November. Keep an eye on them, South Carolina Gamecocks. That'll do it for the boys. Again, let it fly in the comments section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.